Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Hey, welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. I'm Sean, and I'm so glad you're listening today. We have some good things in store on this episode, brought to you in part by Reata Pharmaceuticals. We talk about it all the time. Life is about how we react. Overcome your circumstances. Live beyond the stuff you're up against. That's a common theme. Today, in a few minutes, we've got an incredible interview with somebody who's really living and breathing those things more so than I think you are, Kyle. No offense.
Oh, well, I can't disagree with that, first of all.
He's definitely, maybe we're in the same boat, but I would say he's definitely driving or captaining the ship.
Absolutely. So much that we can learn from our guest today.
So stay tuned for that coming up in a few minutes. A pretty incredible conversation. Kyle, what's going on in your world today?
Well, as you know, I went for a ride right before we recorded.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been using this heart rate monitor for about 5 years, and it's connected to an app, and you get points based on what heart rate zone you're in. So, you know, there's like the gray zone, the yellow, green, I forget what all the colors are, blue. Anyway, you get points every month. And in order to keep your status, you have to get a certain amount of points. Well, late June, my heart rate monitor stopped working. And so I was going to be traveling for most of July. So I was like, oh, well, I'll just, for the first time in 5 years, I'll not do it this month. But then I got back from vacation and I was like, all right, I've got like 6 days. I could probably pull this off. So I ordered a new heart rate monitor. And I've been working like crazy to try and get this. And now I have 65 points. Out of 1,300, I have 65 left. Tomorrow is the last day of the month. So I think I'm going to get it done, even if I have to do a little workout here in my place.
Nice. Congratulations.
So with that context, I wanted to talk about a funny dynamic that I'm not sure that I'm really proud of. Whenever I'm on the bike trail and somebody passes me, especially if it's somebody like on a mountain bike with just like sneakers on and, you know, they're not a cyclist that like, you know, I feel like I should be faster than them, right?
Sure.
Total like 13, 14-year-old mentality. And so they pass me, and then they're waiting at the stoplight, and I linger in the background and time it just right so I can pass them. And then for the next like 3 miles, I'm working my butt off to stay in front of them, looking in my mirror to see if they're gaining on me. But anyway, that happens all the time.
Sure.
And like I said, I don't know if I'm proud of it, but at the same time, it makes me work really hard sometimes.
Yep.
And, you know, that makes me score more points on my heart rate app, right? And it's a better workout.
For sure.
So maybe it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I would say I'm guessing there's a bit of natural human tendency to compete.
Right.
You know, I've done it before where I see somebody coming up on me and I can't really make it out like who they are or what kind of bike they're on, or I can't. They're too far.
Yeah.
But in my head, it just gives me something to focus on.
Right.
Because the trail can be, I mean, it can be a little boring sometimes if you don't have a book or, like audio or music or something, depending on where your head's at. Having somebody pass you or approaching you gives you something to work towards. Like, no, I'm going to stay in front or whatever it may be.
Exactly.
I've done it too, where I'll see a marker coming up, and I want to see how fast I can get to that marker.
Yeah, of course. Just like that, yeah.
I would say it's a good thing. What would be a bad thing would be you boasting or, rubbing it in their face or, throwing something at the kid and saying, yeah, screw you, kid. Or, kicking them over or pushing them over when you roll up next to them. That's not
I guess
cool.
I didn't mention that part.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that. To throw a stick in their spokes or something. That's not okay,
exactly.
Kyle.
All right. Well, I'm glad I know that now.
Yeah. Don't forget.
The following message is brought to you by Reata Pharmaceuticals.
Hey, Kyle, you would say that there's no time like the present, right?
Yeah, of course. And?
Well, like now is the time. Be in the now. The moment is now.
Yeah, I would say focusing on the now is pretty important. But what are you getting at?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I just want to let our community know that Skyclarys omavaloxolone 50 milligram capsules is now available.
Of course. The first and only FDA-approved prescription medicine for Friedreich ataxia in patients 16 years and older is now available.
So if you or a loved one has FA, be sure to talk to your doctor to see if Skyclarys is right for you.
Now, dude. The time is now.
And to stay updated on all things Skyclarys, visit Skyclarys.com.
Before taking Skyclarys, tell your healthcare provider about your medical conditions and medicines you take. Skyclarys may cause serious side effects, including an increase in liver enzymes in your blood, increase in a blood protein which tells how well your heart is working, and changes in cholesterol levels. Your doctor will test these levels before and during treatment with Skyclarys. The most common side effects of Skyclarys include increased liver enzymes, headache, nausea, stomach pain, tiredness, diarrhea, and muscle pain. Call your doctor if you have any side effects. For additional information about Skyclarys, please see the full prescribing information and patient product information at www.skyclarys.com. This ad was brought to you by Reata Pharmaceuticals.
All right, Sean, it's time for a special segment that we're calling Quote of the Week. This week, my quote comes from Michael J. Fox. It's a quote that I think I've probably used numerous times on this podcast, but I feel like it means a lot to me, and it applies to every situation. We only can't if we don't. Partly I love it because it's short and right to the point. We only can't if we don't. I feel like it's just do it, or be the change you want to see in the world. It really says, if you want to do something, it's on you. Get it done.
Yep.
And the only reason we can't is, well, I guess if we don't do it, if we're not the ones to get the things done, then it's not going to happen.
If it's important to you, you'll at least try. Put in a good effort and get it done. So I'm with you. That's a good quote.
And that's the quote of the week. We've talked about it in so many different ways. Life is not about what happens to us. Life is about how we react. Dr. Tyler Sexton is the medical director of pediatrics at Singing River Health System in Mississippi, where he focuses on adult and pediatric wound care and serves as chair of pediatrics, wound care, and hyperbaric medicine. He's published many papers focused on hyperbaric medicine and its medicinal effects in many different clinical applications. He holds numerous professional certificates and high honors. Oh, and he has cerebral palsy. He's an international motivational speaker, and he's written a couple books. Dr. Sexton, welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
What's up, guys? It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you.
We're honored to have you and dig into your story a little bit. So you're a pediatrician. Tell us a little bit about what that's like for you.
Well, yeah, man, it's pretty interesting because, as you said, I have cerebral palsy, and that's what gave me my passion to be a pediatrician. I was an ex-28-weeker, was told I'd never walk, talk, or even be a doctor. They told my parents they'd keep my body warm and keep my body on a respirator so they could hold me for the first and last time before they buried me. There wasn't much hope for my survival. They said that if I did survive, I'd be blind, mentally and physically disabled, and never walk. And obviously, as you guys know, 18 surgeries, months of hospital care, a lot of physical therapy, and some grace of God. Here I sit and here I stand as a pediatrician. Now, that didn't come without a price, but being a pediatrician is the greatest gift of my life. It is. I'm a hospitalist, which means I work in the hospital, but I also have a traditional clinic. And then I have a subspecialty, like you said, in wound care and hyperbaric medicine. And for me, it started in complex care because special needs. I love your guys' slogan and just who you are, Two Disabled Dudes, because, that's what it's all about. I'm a handicapped doctor. You get to look at people and say, I know how you feel and mean it. And very few physicians or healthcare people can do that, right? And so that's not being, they have this thing now about this people first language. You shouldn't say that I'm the doctor with CP, that it defines you, and that's offensive. They're supposed to say, oh, you're afflicted with or whatever. I think that's bogus. I am the doctor with CP. I'm proud of that, right? And so I think with you guys, that's what you guys emulate too. And so for me as a doctor, I get to walk in every day and impact people's lives because of my disability. It's given me credibility, and I get to see all these kids.
I imagine there's pros and cons to that, right? The big pro would be you can relate to people differently than able-bodied doctors. But I also wonder, have you experienced people seeing you walk in maybe for the first time and they're like, oh, I don't want him. Give me another one. Like what is, how does that ever happen? And how do you, navigate those situations?
That's a good, it has. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I said it hadn't, right? I mean, it has. I use a service dog to help me walk. When I was much younger in my career, it happened a lot. Yeah. I would go in to see doctors and they'd say, well, you can't be a doctor because they won't come see you because you're different, because you're sick. And I said, well, who do you think we're trying to save? You don't go to a doctor because you're well. Yeah. You go to the doctor because you're sick, because you want to feel better. I've had patients that said, I'm afraid of the dog, or is there somebody else? Or, made some inappropriate remarks saying, I have my doubts about you, those kind of things. But then I say, you know what? Give me a chance. If you don't like me, I'll find somebody else. Sure. That's what I used to do, especially in residency. I'd say, you know what? You're right. But let me show you what I can do. Let me get to know you and let me see. And that would happen. And then in a lot of ways, I'll tell you, a lot of the prejudices, there are some people that are pretty, could we say stupid or truly prejudiced, but most people are just ignorant. And I mean that with respect. They don't mean to be ignorant or downtrodden on it. They just don't know. So they don't know how to do it. And I always tell people, come out of your comfort zone and come walk in mine. And that's why I love kids, right? Because I get to impact kids and parents at the same time. And kids are so unassuming. They're like, hey, what's wrong with your legs? Yeah. What's wrong with your eye? Why do you walk that way? And so I can say, well, let me tell you, baby, this is why. And I was born this way. And this is what happened. And so I get to use that as kind of a deflector. But I have been, when I was younger, I got thrown out of medical school because of my disability. I had to go to the Caribbean. But I met my wife there, started my career in hyperbaric medicine. And there's always a purpose and a plan in those things. And I've learned this. I've learned that 10% of life is what happens to you, and 90% is how you react to it. And that doesn't make it easy every day. Like I said, there are days I've cried myself to sleep when I was younger. I've done that, but I've learned as I often say, if you live by everybody else's approval, you'll die by their rejection. And thankfully, not everyone you see is going to be like, we don't want the handicapped guy. Most of the time, they kind of, because I am handicapped. They want the doctor with the dog. They want the compassion because I know what it's like to have my back on a gurney and to learn to trust in something greater. I know what it's like to have no hope, to sit there and say, will I walk after this surgery?
Yeah.
Will I be the man that you see today? Will I be the man that I'm excited and have a zest for life? And I am, and I was. But I had to learn those things very quickly. And now I get to impart that on my patients. And that's what's so cool for what I get to do now.
I imagine the dog has to work well with kids. I would imagine most kids probably see the dog and are like, hell yeah, I want that guy. You know?
Oh, for sure. No, the dog has been, I mean, it's incredible. Matter of fact, I'll tell you a story when I knew. So going to residency and going to medical school, it was hard because people would, some were very discriminatory against the dog. For me, that's my living cane. That's my wheelchair. That's my ability to get around, right? I haven't broken a bone or fallen since I've had a dog. I've had a dog since I was 18. I'm on my third service dog now. So still just old enough to stay out late. I'm only 38. So, we're making it. But I'll tell you a story. They were like, how does their life has to change to deal with me or to have the dog around? I said, it doesn't at all. The dog helps me pick up objects. And I'll never forget, I had a patient who was 16 years old who I had to do a lumbar puncture on. And for those of your listeners out there that may or may not know what a lumbar puncture is, right? It's where you put a needle in the spine, usually for mamas. You numb them up and you get spinal fluid and to test if there's an illness, right? And so I had to do an LP on a kid, and she was very, very scared. And I'll never forget it. The way you have to do it, you basically have to be like a mad cat and arch your back like a C so you can get in that space. And so I put my dog in front of her, and I told him to sit. And she wrapped her arms around the dog, and he put his head on his shoulder. And I was able to sit there and do an LP with my service dog comforting this patient. And that's the moment I knew, and this was 10 years ago. I was just fresh into residency, and it was an affirmation for me to be like, you know what? I can do things a little differently. I can bring an aspect of healing, an aspect of care that no one else can do. And these kids are instantly drawn to the doctor with the dog, the ability after the test, he sits in the corner and he gets to pet him. It's just a really incredible aspect that I get to give.
Well, if you don't mind, let's back way up. You talked about being born and the doctor was like not worth time or effort to your parents. Obviously, your parents didn't accept that as reality. Describe your parents for us. What was their approach to raising you?
So that's a great question, man. My mom and dad are incredible. And I will tell you, they enlisted in me a can-do attitude. Never give up. I'll tell you a couple stories. And one big one is my parents, when they got the diagnosis of cerebral palsy, by the time I was 18 months, I still couldn't sit up. Obviously, they knew something was wrong. Got the MRI. They saw that I had spastic diaplegia. They knew this was going to be a life-altering thing. Still, again, there's no guidebook, as you guys well know, on how to deal with some of these things. And back that up 38 years ago, there definitely was no knowledge comparatively now, right? I sound like an old guy talking like this. I'm not that old, right? I mean, it's just not. And yet you talk about it, it's like, wow, what's going on? Well, my parents, the one thing I respected them the most is they dared me to dream instead of always looking at the next medical miracle. They always pushed me to say, we're not going to let that define you. We learn what I can and cannot do, right? I know that I can't go run a mile. Could I? Yeah, but I'll be sore. Do I need to do that to prove myself? Absolutely not. So what my parents did was said, I'm not going to let my disability define me. My mom, I'll never forget when she got the diagnosis of cerebral palsy, she took 2 days and she mourned. She mourned the loss of a normal child. She mourned some of her thoughts and dreams, right? The basketball player. I mean, my dad was a basketball player in high school. My sister ended up being a college basketball player. My parents were very athletic. Tall, athletic. I mean, if I was popping out, they thought I was going to be the next football or basketball star. And obviously that's not the plan. And they mourned that. And they said, you know what? I'll never forget, my mom always says, he may not play basketball, but he may own a basketball team someday. So they sacrificed and got me the best shoes I could, put them on my AFOs. And you just never know. And that's what I learned very quickly from my parents, that we all have the same hopes and dreams as everybody else, but that it may look a little bit different. And I learned quickly, and I hope people realize, whatever you're struggling with, our handicapped, mine and your guys included, the world may be able to see to some degree, but everyone's handicapped. Everybody wishes there was something about themselves that they could change, that they're struggling with, right? We're all handicapped. It's just, are you going to let that define you? Are you going to become a victim, or are you going to live in victory? And that's what my parents taught me. And it doesn't mean that every day, guys, that you're going to be like, oh yeah, no, I'm cool. The pain we deal with,
Sure.
the fasciculations, the ridicules. I mean, it's not like, but every day I tell you, there's a difference. They taught me the difference between joy and happiness, right? Because not every day you're going to be happy, but I choose joy every day, no matter what's going on in my life, no matter what somebody says, what somebody thinks. And like I said, you find the people that believe in you. You find the circle that says, you know what, this is what it's all about. This guy's got it. My parents taught me to fight the battles, but also let some of those things go, and didn't teach me, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I don't care. I like to be a little risque. And I live by the word radical authenticity. But we live in a world now that everyone's offended. You imagine when we grew up, how many times we've been offended just because of how we're made and how we were created by God. We are imperfect by the world's eyes. Yeah, we don't sit around and complain. These people are well-bodied, and they can't even finish a sentence, or they're, I work too hard, I'm too stressed. Please, if the handicapped guys can do it, what's your excuse? I'll get in trouble for saying that, but that's kind of my motto every day. I try to push as hard as I can to show people, not in a boastful way, but in encouragement. Be like, hey, can you keep up with me? Just like Cuba Gooding Jr. said in Men of Honor, can they keep up with me? And that's kind of what I try to do every day in my life.
You know what I love about how you describe your mom is that she mourned when you were diagnosed. And I think we all do that, like on a continual basis a little bit. We all have this vision, and nothing ever happens exactly like your vision. You always have to let go of that and figure out what's next, because it's never, ever clear. And I love that your mom was able to let go of her vision and be like, look, he'll be an owner, maybe not a player or whatever,
No, for sure. And let me share with you a story that really has impacted me, that my parents taught me, and my mom specifically. I have a helicopter mama. She was always over me, right? Make sure I didn't get hurt, didn't do what I could do. And, there's people in our lives that you never know that there's a ripple, right? A pond that impact you, and you know how far those ripples go out. And one of those people that really impacted my life and created a reverberation through my entire career is my physical therapist named Michelle Larson. And at that time, my mom, like I said, helicopter mom, and my Michelle, she said, Lisa, my mom's name is Lisa. She said, you need to let Tyler get out there and do things like the other kids. If I can teach him to pick up an object, will you let him go to the Easter egg park by the house? And my mom was like, well, yeah, sure. If you, if you can teach him to do that, that's fine. Now, as you guys well know, you got to remember, learning how to wipe myself and not fall off the toilet, or learning how to use the palsy hands and feet. Those are small miracles. And so my physical therapist, she bribed me with some juicy fruit. And I learned how to pick up an object and put it in a basket. Well, time came finally that Easter was upon us, and finally, Mom, I don't know if she even believed it or not that it could happen, but finally I learned how to do this, this task. They tied a basket on my walker, and all the kids are lined up. My sister and I, we look alike because you have to dress alike on Easter, right? So we're all in this field, and there's thousands of kids in this field, and there's thousands of eggs. And all of a sudden the gun goes off, and all the kids go running, and I was left behind. See, my mom, she started to cry angrily, bitterly. She said, see, this is exactly why I don't let Tyler go out and do anything, because we're going to send this crippled boy home and he's going to have no eggs. And she walked over to apologize for bringing me. And she looked down, and my basket was overflowing with eggs. She said, how in the world is your basket overflowing with eggs? I said, the kids are running so fast, their eggs are popping out of baskets. I'm bent over and picking them up and putting them in mine. Right? And it's clear as day. And I'm not talking about some weird, God from the heaven or voice from heaven, but there was just a promise told to my mom, just through an affirmation of the Lord, saying, if you just let me have him, I'm going to fill his basket with blessings. He's not always going to be first. He may not be seen as the best, but I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to fill his basket with blessings. And that's what my parents taught me, was to learn and to appreciate the small blessings, because the small blessings, day by day by day, you have to walk the rocks to see the mountain views. And eventually those mountain views become mountain views because you've walked those rocks, right? But as you're walking them, they're pain. But then you look back and say, I made it. Yeah. You just go every day and day, right? And that's what my parents taught me, one day at a time.
Wow. Love it. So, Dr. Sexton, you talked a little bit about, difficulty using your hands. You also talked about lumbar puncture, like putting a needle into somebody's spine. I don't know, that to me, that just seems obviously, I don't know you. I don't see you doing these things. What are the challenges that you face because of CP in your practice on a daily basis?
Sure. So thankfully for me, my upper body is pretty normal. I'm from the lower body. I'm affected. So I struggle with, long-term balance. The dog helps me out a lot with that in terms of getting things. He can pick up dropped objects for me. I do struggle with, moving around as fast as everybody else. I do it, but I pay for it later in terms of, the pain and those kind of things. But for me, it's more of a balance and lower ambulation and lower feet and those kind of things. So the amazing thing for me is I have the dog, which helps me incredibly, but also I've just created an incredible team. I have incredible nurses and nurse practitioners that do love me and care for me. And so if I tell them to, go pick this up for me, they go and do it. So I joke that I use their legs. I said, why use mine when I can use yours? So, for me, a lot of that is if I have to be standing for a long period of time, I use the dog and, alternate my feet or whatever. I also had to come humbly and say there are things that I can't do, like stand up for 3 hours and do a procedure. I have to get I have to get a stool or something, and realizing that that's not a negative, right? It took me a long time to get there. I mean, now it's funny. I don't have anything to prove, so I'll just do it, or use my service dog, or use a cane before I had a service dog. And those kind of things, those were hard for me because as an 18-year-old kid, that doesn't look cool, right? Or use a motorized scooter, that doesn't look cool. But now I'm like, yeah, let me use a scooter, saves my legs. So long distances, using a scooter, short distances, the dog. But my upper body, all those things are equal to an able person, which helps. But then I just I go slow and take it moment by moment. And use my resources, my people around me.
Yeah. Can you tell us a story about an instance where your disability negatively affected being able to give care for somebody?
I will tell you that for me, my entire dream was to be a doctor. And I'm going to go all the way back to just becoming a doctor. I did well on my MCATs, my admission test. And I thought, when I was going off to college, I thought it was going to be easier. But the older I got, the more I got made fun of. Matter of fact, I thought when I was in college, well, everybody in college is crazy. You can sit in the corner half naked eating Cheetos, seeking enlightenment, doing whatever you want, right? I just walk funny. So they'll leave me alone. That wasn't the case. I got made fun of all the time, to the point where it was tough for me to see some of the things I talk about and how secure I am. I mean, if anybody calls me a doofus or doesn't believe in me now, I just say, hey, thanks for your opinion. I love you. Bye. Right. And it doesn't even affect me anymore. You can say whatever you want. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It wasn't the case when I was 18, 19 years old. Right. And so I struggled a lot. So much so that I had my service dog and I used a Segway, the thing President Bush fell off of, or the mall cops used, because I couldn't get long distances. I used a Segway to get around, but I got made fun of so bad at that time that I'd put my sunglasses on, pretending that I was blind, because nobody would mess with the blind guy with his service dog. Of course, they'd freak out when I didn't hit anybody as I drove away on my Segway, right? But I struggled a lot. And I went off so I did all these things in college. I had an advisor, and then I went off to medical school, and I said, I want to be a doctor. And they said, well, we need to pick a different career. I said, I need to pick a different advisor. So I found another one that I want to be a doctor. And they said, well, let's do something else if that doesn't work out. I said, okay, I need to pick another one. Found a third one. I said, listen, I know I'm a young, dumb 18-year-old kid. I'm going to tell you it's crazy, but I want to be a doctor. And they planned that out. Little did I know what that was going to take. Well, then fast forward a couple years later, and I got my degree in biomedical sciences, minor in biomedical physics, went to the University of South Florida. I used to work at Shriners Hospital. I thought my dreams, I was going to stay in Florida, right? I wasn't going to leave, wasn't going to move. I sat in front of an admission doctor that I really wanted to go to, and he said, you will never be a doctor because of your disability. And I said, well, wait, you can't say that. And he said, well, I know 8 of 12 people that are going to reject you just because of your disability. And just because we say we like you doesn't mean we like you. And I went to another interview, and I had about 12, 15 interviews. I went to another interview, and you have to spend your own money, right? And I flew up there, and a doctor met me and said, oh, we're not going to interview you. I just want to see if this was real. And made me get back on the plane and didn't even interview me. That's true. That's a true story.
Wow.
And so I thought to myself, I said, my goodness. I mean, I I can't believe this. And so you talk about what negatively affected my entire career up until going through residency and becoming a doctor was always impeded by people trying to not let me be a doctor. Because, the one thing I try to pride myself on is seeing value in people no matter what. We all have a certain value, right? Because you went to school or you've done this or that. But when we lose value in people, it's when we fail. And the problem is that when people with disabilities, and this is not to downtrodden make anybody feel bad, but there's a moment that you're going to judge no matter what. You get judged, I get judged no matter what, right? As soon as we walk in somewhere, before they get to know us, right? Not everybody, but it does happen. And what I try to teach people is when we start losing value in people, that's when we fail. And I learned very early on in my career that my value wasn't seen in the correct way. And it took me a long time to, you can't always fight. There is injustice. And I was rejected in the US because of my disability. But I found that pathway through medical school in the Caribbean, which I ended up going to the Caribbean, finishing there, found my passion for hyperbaric medicine, found my wife. She saw the way I walked, my little pimp stagger, that locked her in. And now, been married for 11 years and 3 kids and, life is good. But, it's not what I would have expected. And that's what I want to tell people too. Like I'm a real type A guy. I want to do it this way. I expect to do it this way. And yet I had to learn to submit that sometimes my plan isn't the ultimate plan. And it ended up working out better than I ever would have expected. But my entire trek to being a doctor was one that every day people would say, you're not worth it. You won't become a doctor. They won't come see you because of your disability. Now I'm chair of pediatrics and I built a program. Now, it doesn't always happen with single parents anymore because now they know of me. But once they see who I am and the passion I have for people, they give it a chance. And then they realize, because of what I've been through, I can cut right to the chase and I can put people on quality accountability, I would say. You have a guy coming in that is feeling sorry for themselves and say, no, we're not going to do that. You're going to get up and you're going to go to physical therapy. And I can say that. You can say that. Like, hey, I've done it. Here I am. Where other doctors, and I'm not saying, and I know amazing. I've got good friends that are able-bodied doctors, right? That we're dear friends of mine and vice versa. But there are things I can do that no one else can do because of what we've been through, right? There's an opportunity there, and that's what I get to do now. And so I'm glad I'm over it. There are always challenges, but my trek to being a doctor, I tell people all the time, everyone's like, how did you deal with it? It was by the grace of God. I learned that I'd rather walk with an limp in Christ than with a strut in the world. It is my faith that's gotten me here. But I also have learned that now all the struggles I deal with now pale in comparison to what I was living, 15 years ago, right? My life is easy comparatively. So I got a sore back, some sore legs and knees. Man, I get to wake up every day and see patients. It's a miracle that I'm a doctor today. And it's fun to be able to do that every day.
So what else keeps you busy in the intro? Obviously 3 kids. And you do some traveling, some speaking. What else do you have going on that keeps you, gets you out of bed every day?
Sure, no, that's a good question. I really do live by the mantra that every day we live, we have a chance to impact somebody's life. I love serving people. I have a book, one called God Bless These Little Legs, and one called There's No Such Thing as Can't. We did those, and I became a motivational speaker, not because I desired to. I always tell people, just like your guys' platform, it's just such a blessing. I know you guys didn't wake up and just say, I'm going to do this, and you just want to be a motivational speaker. Yes, we wanted to, but it happened organically, right? I was a speaker and then wrote a book. I wasn't some author that became a speaker, right? It was part of my ministry and testimony. So I do that. I do hyperbaric medicine in the Caribbean. Every year we do a huge mission trip to the island of Grenada, where we were the first company that ever put a hyperbaric chamber down. I love going to overseas to see special needs in that way, to see how blessed we are here. It gives me a different perspective when people will wait 6-8 hours to see you in third world countries, and then they won't wait an hour for you in the States and write a bad Yelp review, right? Because you were busy. So it reinvigorates my desire to serve. So I speak. I get a great, my wife is incredible. We have a great schedule where we basically work, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So we get to travel together. We get to speak. We do a lot of physician advocacy or with disabled advocacy, work for the Physician Resource Council and focus on the family. And I get to just tell my story and kind of talk about the books and then, raise my kids, which is really cool. I hope that my kids catch me in the act of excellence, that they see that nothing can limit them. Because I adopted a special needs child as my third, as you heard me say, and then my other two are able-bodied. So it's very interesting to watch that dynamic of, also I struggled a lot. I don't know where you guys were or at in terms of even finding a relationship as a disabled person. The value of, finding a wife. I didn't want to be in a wheelchair by the time I was 40. I'm supposed to have a knee replacement by the time I'm 40. And those kind of things I struggled with a lot. And would I find value and acceptance in it? And I did. And to find somebody that loves me for me, and then have a family and teach them that, that we are all fearfully and wonderfully made. That, like I said, we're all handicapped. To see that dynamic is really cool. And to see that what matters is what's on the inside, and that a spirit is more important than a broken body. And to be able to teach that to my kids and teach that to people every day when I speak and do things like this. I mean, this is, if you take, I believe there's two ways we live, either on a stage or a platform. And stages are built for self-edification. It's about me. It's about I. And I just disagree with that. I use my doctor and being an MD to build a platform to impact people. I care more about telling my story like this than I do being a doctor. And I don't mean that like, oh my gosh, is he crazy? Maybe. But I truly love just talking to people and realizing that our value is so much more than what the world will place on us. And we have to start finding that and using the right perspective, because you can alter your life by altering your attitude. If you say you're going to have a bad day, you're going to have a bad day, right?
Sure.
I mean, it just is. But if you say, you know what, I'm going to find a way, no matter what, to impact somebody or have a good day, it's hard not to have a good day, right? No matter what's going on in your life. Now, I'm not saying it's not every day. It kind of be tough. But most of the time, if you keep that mentality, I do. I wake up, man, I'm up at 5 a.m., whether I stayed up till midnight or I, went to bed at 8. I mean, I just am. I'm just eager and have a passion to clip. So that's what keeps me going.
You mentioned one thing that I wanted to ask for a friend. How did you meet your wife? How did you overcome the sort of mental barriers and emotional barriers to create a relationship with another person?
So my wife and I met in medical school. We actually didn't initially run in the same even friend crowd. I was brutally mistreated in medical school. I mean, I had people come up to me and say, you're going against the gods to try to become a doctor. I said, well, I only serve one, so I'll see what happens. I mean, I know I make it quit, but that's one of the people that, I met. I said, well, we'll see what happens. And said, I know you'll be top of your class, but I'll never take my kids to you because you're disabled. These are medical students. And so I would leave. I would go to the island and I would just minister and talk to kids. I had a little dune buggy, so I would just play with kids. And I was a scuba diver. I learned how to scuba dive at 12 years old. It gave me freedom in the water, and so that's my sport. I've been doing that since I was 12 years old. And I didn't have many friends. Well, my wife at that time, I used to go to this place on the beach, and I would have a beer and I would have a burger. And I would scuba dive in the morning, and I would have my beer and a burger for lunch, and I would study all day. And she would swim. She'd be down there with a group of friends, and she was just a swimmer. And she's a sunbather, who want to get her bronze on, and she's in the Caribbean studying. And she would do the same thing. So she would study at a different table. And, we just got to kind of know each other. For me, it was always, as soon as I saw her, I just wanted to get to know her. I had no idea. I struggled a lot with relationships in terms of finding a wife. I didn't know that I'd find a wife in medical school. I believed that I would, but I did not go out and try to seek one. I had to learn very quickly. Like I remember I had a crush in high school. I just wished I asked her out to the Sadie Hawkins dance. Of course she said no, because she didn't go out with the handicapped guy. I mean, that was a real thing. Right. So, I struggled with rejection my entire life because our appearance. I struggled with who would want to date the handicapped guy. The very question you're asking, sure. Right? Who would want to date me? Yet we still have the same hopes and dreams and desires as everybody else. Yeah. But then as I got older, I realized, I'm going to be me. And I realized, and I hope this doesn't sound crazy, but I people watch a lot, and I observe, and I would watch. I'm like, well, how is that person? That dude is he's 300 pounds, and she's 100 pounds, and she is has black hair and has 55 tattoos, and this guy's got no tattoos. I just looked at people and I'm like, well, they're just as weird as I am. And I mean that not in a weird way. I know you can hear my heart when I say it. I was like, that's what I did. When I was 18, I was like, well, I would watch college, and although nobody wanted to date me, I had my own desires of how I wanted to treat my wife as a princess and those things. But I thought, well, wow, we're all, like I said, all handicapped. We're all weird in our own way. And I mean that with the utmost respect. So when I met her in medical school, I started going to this point where I'm going to be what you see right now. I'm going to be a little crazy. I wear superhero t-shirts. I'm going to show them who I am. I like to do a little bit of video gaming when I can. I love to swim and scuba dive. I'm just going to get to know her. And I didn't put anything out there in terms of wanting a relationship. And I just let it happen organically. The struggle I had later is she started to be interested. And I was like, wow, this is actually more. This could be love. And that scared me, because then it came down to, how would I change, or what would I look like in 10 years, and would I need help? And does she truly love me if I had to be put in a wheelchair, which is a reality for me if I have the knee replacements and, another 10 years, that may be. And does she really love me? And I left her on the side of the road crying and broke up with her because of that very thing. I was like, no, I can't have her. She doesn't genuinely love me. I will be in a wheelchair. I will be useless. I can't take care of her. And we were going to a baseball game in Florida, and I broke up with her. She had no idea it was coming. And as I was doing it, she literally said to me, I couldn't believe it was just an affirmation. She said, why are you doing this? I love you. I would push you in a wheelchair. I would carry you if I needed to. And it was incredible. Like one time, it was an affirmation that same week before I broke up with her. She baked this cake. We were in residency. We were doing doctor things together. We were doing externships, they're called. We were thanking somebody for being there. We lived in different apartments, but we lived on a second floor, same hall, right? So I went and got this cake. She had me carry it. And of course, palsy man with a cake, I didn't think about it, but I fell down the stairs and destroyed the cake that she worked all night to take care of. And she literally said, no big deal, I'll just make another one. And that's the moment when I realized, wow, she really does care. For those out there that are looking at it, or for your friend to think about it, I think it's hard because you're going to struggle with authenticity, right? You're going to struggle with that. And that's something I struggled with. Is it true? Because you're always going to be guarded and you're trying to guard your heart. I let it all go. And you have to learn to trust and give yourself to somebody to see what happens. The way that I looked at it, man, I had so much heartache that was given to me by other people just because they didn't even know me. Nope, can't do that because you walk funny. Nope, can't be a doctor because we don't want it. Nope. I thought to myself at that point, I said, I'm going to open myself up. And if I fail, or if she says no, at least I made that choice for once for me. Right? Because very few times do we get to make that choice. It's often made for us with people with disabilities. And we have to teach people to overcome that or break that down, right? And so I don't know if that helps or makes sense, but that's what I did. I literally was like, I'm gonna lay it out there, because the worst thing she can do is say no, and I've heard that before. And so let me see what happens.
Yeah, you make these assumptions in your own head as a person with a disability that this is what other people think about me. And then that keeps you from throwing it out there, like you said. But if you throw it out there and actually learn what other people think instead of just making it up in your own head, that's probably a better way to go.
That's extremely strong. That's exactly right. And that's what I've learned a lot in my career and in our relationship. And it's so much more pure. Like, I know she loves me for me. I don't worry about her seeing some hunk. There's nobody cuter than me in her eyes. You know what I mean? It's so cool because if she can love me now, what else is there, right? And that's what's so cool. I think there's just such a deeper piece. And man, it's been awesome. Like I said, 11 years and going.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Tyler, I know it's only been like half an hour, but just hearing you talk, your energy, your perspective, your commitment to quality and doing what the world says you can't inspires me, and it causes me to feel like I'm ready to climb Mount Everest.
Well, when you do, give me a call, because you and I will go hand in hand.
For sure. Tyler, we'd love to share with our listeners where they can connect with you, where to find your book, your website. Give us a place for listeners to check you out.
Awesome, man. Thank you. So you guys can check me out at tylersexton.com. You can pick up God Bless These Little Legs there. And No Such Thing as Can't as well. No Such Thing as Can't can be bought at any bookstore, online, anywhere. But please drop me a line, tylersexton.com, for speaking, for emails. Let me know what you thought about this podcast. If you guys ever need anything, you guys two disabled dudes, man, we're family now. So that's where we are. That's where you can find me, and we're honored and hope to continue to work together. And I wish everyone out there listening be blessed and shoot for the stars.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tyler.
Thank you.
Sean, Dr. Sexton faced so many challenges in his life. Just hearing about him talking about how much he got made fun of because of the way he walked, and then seeing him as the head of pediatrics, I don't know, it's just the scope of his story is really incredible, and I'm so glad we had him on today.
Yeah, I have a feeling this episode is going to quickly make its way into my top 5. That was pretty powerful and very encouraging. Kyle, let's wrap this up with our usual thank you notes. As always, we like to end every episode with a note of gratitude. So, Kyle, who do you have today?
I think I've mentioned Ride a Taxi Hometown previously. We did a few events in the Bay Area in California, and it's a new program this year where anyone, anywhere can do a Ride a Taxi event on a bike trail in their neighborhood. And the Boston FA community did their event on July 30th, and I just am so grateful for the way that they have really taken this forward and made it their own, put so much effort into it. I see Ride a Taxi as a tool, a platform for the community, and the Boston FA community has really taken that and made it true. So much gratitude.
Wonderful. I recently had a couple large and somewhat heavy items that I needed to get from my room to my car. I got a replacement walker from a recent flight destruction. Mm-hmm. We'll talk more about that another day.
All right.
And then I had some Amazon packages. Well, when these boxes were delivered, I wasn't home, so somebody I live with brought them to the door by my bedroom. So they were in, that was easy. Well, it was time to get rid of one of the walkers. The replacement came in, so I needed to get rid of the old one and the huge box that comes in. And then one of the Amazon packages, quite large, I wanted to return. Well, getting these things to my car, as you can imagine, not easy. 2 different occasions in the same week, 2 different roommates or housemates helped me out. I caught them in the kitchen. I'm like, hey, do you have a minute? And could you help me? And in both situations, both guys were more than happy to help. So I'm saying thank you to Chris and Duvall.
That's the best. When you can count on that help when you truly need it, and no questions asked. I love that.
This episode has been made possible in part by Reata Pharmaceuticals, and we are grateful for their continued support of this show. We're also thankful for Tyler and his willingness to come on and be a part of the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We'd encourage you to check out our show notes, where we have linked Tyler's efforts and his website. If you're enjoying the show, please continue to share it with a friend, rate and review. Those stars go a long ways for us in the podcast world. Of course, you can always subscribe so you never miss an episode. We look forward to talking at you again next week. Until then, keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to donate.
Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app.